Nam Talu Cave. On October 13, 2007, 9 people entered Nam Talu Cave in Khao Sok National Park, Thailand. The group included 6 tourists, 4 Swiss nationals, a 10-year-old boy from Germany, and a teenage girl from the UK, as well as 2 Thai guides. The cave is known for its scenic passages filled with shallow water. During the dry season, guided tours are common, but this tour took place in the middle of Thailand's rainy season. The group entered the cave shortly after noon. The weather at the entrance was stable. No rain had fallen in the area that morning, and conditions seemed safe. However, rainfall had occurred further upstream in the nearby mountains, where the cave's watershed begins. Because Nam Talu is part of a complex drainage system, it is highly sensitive to upstream flooding. As the group made their way through the cave, they followed a stream passage that grew deeper. The guides noticed that the water level was slowly rising, but they continued deeper. Minutes later, a flash flood surged through the tunnel. The water rose quickly and flooded the narrow sections of the cave. Panic broke out. One of the guides instructed the group to climb a slope toward higher ground. Some managed to reach safer areas. Others were caught in the current. The water filled the tunnel within minutes, leaving no airspace in sections. The narrow passageway gave the group no room to escape. 8 of the 9 people inside the cave drowned. Only the British teenager survived by climbing onto a narrow ledge above the water. She waited there for more than 16 hours before being rescued by a search team. The other tourists and both Thai guides were found dead. Among the victims was the 10-year-old boy from Germany. The incident drew national attention. Authorities closed the cave and later issued a seasonal closure order. From June to November each year, the cave would remain off-limits due to the risk of flash flooding. Signs were installed at the entrance to warn visitors. Local tour companies were instructed not to conduct tours during this time. For more than a decade, the seasonal closure was respected, but enforcement was inconsistent. Some tour operators quietly resumed cave tours during the rainy months if surface weather conditions seemed safe. In many cases, the risk was underestimated. On August 6, 2024, another group entered the Nam Talu Cave despite the official closure. The group included 22 tourists and 2 Thai guides. The weather at the time appeared normal. It had rained the previous evening, but the skies were clear that morning. The group began their tour in the afternoon. At around 5 p.m., while the group was exiting the cave, a flash flood struck. Water from upstream had reached the cave system and rushed through the narrow tunnel. The force of the water trapped the group inside. Thai rescue teams were dispatched quickly. They were able to extract the tourists and one of the guides. However, the second guide, a 37-year-old man, was swept away by the current. His body was found several hours later. He had been helping others escape when the flood overwhelmed him. An investigation followed. The Park Service confirmed that the cave had been closed at the time. The tour company responsible had violated the seasonal closure policy. Legal action was taken against the operator for negligence. After the 2024 incident, park officials strengthened safety measures. Despite these efforts, concerns remain. Some local operators continue to minimize the risks. In a region where tourism is a major source of income, there is pressure to keep popular attractions open. Visitors unfamiliar with the cave's history may not understand the danger. The Nam Talu cave disasters are among the most avoidable cave deaths in recent memory. Schroeder's Pants Cave. On February 13, 1965, 3 members of the Boston Grotto Club arrived in the small town of Dolgeville, New York. Their goal was to explore a cave in the foothills of the Adirondacks known as Schroeder's Pants Cave. The group included 23-year-old James Mitchell, a chemist from Massachusetts, nurse Hetty Miller, and Harvard graduate student Charles Bennett. Before entering the cave, Mitchell visited George Lyon, a local man who, together with Herb Schroeder, had discovered the cave in 1947. Lyon provided them with background information on the layout of the cave, but no one warned them about the conditions inside. Temperatures had hovered around freezing earlier that week, leading to increased runoff. Ice-cold water was now pouring through the cave's passageways. Despite this, the 3 cavers entered. They worked their way through the named sections of the cave, Lemon Squeeze, Z-Bend, and Gun Barrel, until they reached an open chamber with a vertical shaft that dropped roughly 80 feet or about 24 meters into a bell-shaped cavern below. Mitchell was the first to attempt the descent. He clipped into his safety lines and began lowering himself down, but something went wrong. He stopped partway down and appeared to be in trouble. According to Miller, Mitchell attempted to descend further, then tried to climb back up the rope. He was unable to make progress in either direction. He was being hit directly by the water flowing down the shaft. Rescue reports estimated that about 10 gallons or 38 liters of freezing water were landing on his head every minute. The cold quickly became a serious factor. Mitchell's strength began to fade. His voice became weaker. Eventually, he stopped speaking altogether. Bennett and Miller tried to pull him up. They spent 45 minutes struggling with the rope, but couldn't lift him out. Realizing the situation was beyond what they could manage, Bennett exited the cave to find help. A newly formed cave rescue team, the National Capital Grotto Rescue Squad, flew in from Washington, D.C. on Air Force Two. The operation quickly made national headlines. Among the 6 young rescuers was Doug Bradford. None of them had experience with an actual cave rescue, but they had trained for similar situations. They made their way into the cave and reached the shaft. Their first attempt was to pull Mitchell up by the rope, but it was immediately clear that he was no longer alive. Bradford later explained that Mitchell's body was limp and that they quickly understood it would now be a recovery effort. The team worked on widening parts of the cave. They spent 3 days trying to make space to bring the body out, but during one of their rigging attempts, part of the shaft collapsed. Dirt and debris began falling down into the cave. It was no longer safe to continue. With Mitchell's body still suspended by his harness, the cave was sealed. Explosives were used to close the main entrance. Large rocks were placed over the collapse, and a memorial headstone was installed near the site. Pierre Saint-Martin Cave. In August 1952, an international caving expedition began descending into the Pierre Saint-Martin cave system, located in the Pyrenees along the border of France and Spain. At the time, it was considered the deepest known cave in the world. Among the team was Marcel Lubin, a 33-year-old French engineer and experienced cave explorer. He served as the second in command of the expedition, which was led by Belgian Professor Cossens. The team had spent nearly a week underground, setting up rope ladders, exploring new passages, and mapping vertical shafts deep inside the mountain. On Wednesday, August 27th, after 6 days underground, Lubins was being hauled up through a vertical shaft as part of the ascent out of the cave. He was suspended by a steel cable attached to a winch system. But just as he was being lifted up the final stretch, the cable snapped. Lubins fell 130 feet or almost 40 meters straight down a rock slope into the shaft. He survived the fall, but the impact left him severely injured with a broken back. He lost consciousness shortly after hitting the ground and fell into a coma. He was now lying 1,260 feet or 384 meters below the surface, inside one of the deepest parts of the cave system. Despite the immense difficulty, a rescue operation was launched. Team members climbed down rope ladders to reach him. A doctor descended into the cave to assess his condition, working by headlamp and candlelight in the cold, damp chamber where Lubins lay unconscious. Despite the risks, a blood transfusion was performed in the cave, an extraordinary attempt at underground medicine. The rescue teams stabilized him as best they could. Over the next 2 days, they attempted to hoist him slowly back toward the surface using a manual winch system, but the shaft was narrow and conditions were dangerous. As the rescue progressed, rocks began to loosen inside the shaft. Falling debris now posed a danger not just to Lubins, but also to the cavers working below. On the evening of August 29th, after nearly 36 hours of rescue efforts, Marcel Lubins died underground. The Jordbrugrotta Cave Tragedy. On February 6, 2014, 5 experienced Finnish cave divers prepared to enter one of the most dangerous underwater cave systems in Europe, Pluragrotta, also known as Jordbrugrotta, located in northern Norway. Their goal was ambitious: dive through a 420 feet or 130-meter deep submerged passage, reach the other side of the mountain, and surface in a distant dry cave chamber. It was a journey that required precision, discipline, and perfect coordination. Each diver carried a closed-circuit rebreather, a high-tech breathing system that recycles air to allow deep dives for extended periods. The group was well prepared, but this cave had claimed lives before. The tunnels were narrow, the water near freezing, and the depth pushed the limits of human endurance. At first, everything went smoothly. The divers followed a fixed guideline that led through the submerged passages. They moved in a staggered formation, each managing their own buoyancy and trim in total darkness. After navigating through tight restrictions, they reached the deepest part of the route, where visibility dropped and the tunnels grew more unstable. Then, something went wrong. Around 360 feet or 110 meters deep, one diver, Jari, got stuck. It was in a narrow restriction between 2 rock walls, a point in the cave where movement was tight even in perfect conditions. He became wedged, unable to go forward or back, and his rebreather began malfunctioning. In moments like this, panic is fatal. Another diver, Patrick, tried to help, but the tunnel was too narrow for both of them to maneuver. Visibility was dropping fast, and the water temperature was just above freezing. Silt from the cave floor filled the tunnel, and now both men were blind. Jari's breathing became frantic, and soon his mouthpiece slipped out. Patrick tried desperately to hold on to him, to insert the backup regulator, to free his partner's arm, but the effort failed. He had to make a choice. Stay and die with him, or leave and find help. He left. Back at the surface, the remaining divers began to realize something was wrong. 2 men were missing. Emergency services were contacted, and within hours, the Norwegian police closed the cave. The bodies, they said, were unreachable, but the team didn't accept that. A few weeks later, a new plan was made in secret. A team of Finnish divers, including close friends of the deceased, returned to the cave against official orders. Over the course of 100 hours, they penetrated the deadly system again, this time solely for recovery. They worked in total silence, inching their way through the tunnel, navigating the same restrictions that had claimed their friends. When they reached the spot where Jari had died, they found his body still suspended in the narrow passage. His rebreather was flooded, his arms still in the same position as when he had last tried to escape. Behind him, deeper in the cave, they found Diver 2, believed to be Kai, who had died while attempting to reach or help Jari. His equipment was mostly intact, but he had run out of breathable gas long before help could have arrived. After carefully securing the bodies and extracting them through some of the tightest passages in the system, the team brought their friends home. It was one of the most difficult recovery dives in history, documented in the 2016 film Diving into the Unknown. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for similar ones and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.